Welcome! This is the Rustic Songbird podcast, and I'm your host, Lydia Walker. This show is for you if you're ready to learn more about the craft of songwriting and take your skills to the next level. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get started. My guest on the show today is Curt Ryle. He is a songwriter and producer, and he has produced several albums for me. We've worked together a lot in the studio, and he's just a great person all around, but an amazing songwriter, has written hits in country music, and today I'm going to talk to him about structure of songwriting, the structure of a great song. We're going to talk about the importance of storytelling in songwriting, and also he's got a really neat project that he's been working on lately, and I wanted to ask about that. So Curt, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lydia. How you doing? It's good to be on your show.
It's great to talk to you, and I can't wait to share some of your story and your wisdom with other songwriters because you've been doing this for a long time, and I know that you have a passion for good music and for helping other people create their own music, and so it's going to be really neat to share that with more people that are listening.
Okay, if I tell your audience that you're my adopted daughter?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm basically adopted by this point.
Lydia practically grew up in my recording studio, so I feel like she's my own kid. But no, I'm really happy to be doing this, honey. And I like your shows, by the way. I'm always fascinated by what you do, and I think it's a great service that you do too.
Thank you. I wish there was something like this when I got started, but really so many people have poured into me. I just want to pass it on to others who are either getting started or trying to take that next step to get better as a songwriter.
Yep.
And so I think hearing stories from different people of how it works is really inspiring. So you've been songwriting for a long time. Let's quickly kind of give some of your backstory of how you got started in music.
Well, you depending on how old your audience is, I'm about to give away my age here, but I was brought here as a songwriter in 1986 by actually Entertainer of the Year, Mel Tillis. Mel Tillis was a very, very big star at that time, country star, and he heard some songs that I had written, liked them, flew me to Nashville and signed me to his publishing company, and I went on to write songs for people like George Jones, Billy Ray Cyrus, and Gene Watson. Were a lot of country artists at that time that were really, really popular. So that's how I got my start.
So you got to learn from the best.
I absolutely did, and I'll tell you a funny story. Mel Tillis told me one time, he said, I had the number one song in the nation, and we were talking about it in his office, and he said, well, now it's time for you to learn how to write. And I thought he was joking, but he really was serious. And he said, you had the basic skills. Now it's time for you to, he said, so I'm going to plug you in with some great songwriters like Dean Dillon and Hank Cochran. And he started naming off these world-class songwriters. And he was really serious about that. And he set me up with them. And boy, I really learned so much from those people.
Yeah, so you had that raw talent and the love of music already, but just being around professionals like that just helped you with the craft of songwriting and
Yep.
knowing like how the whole music industry works.
Yeah, they actually just taught me how to keep focused. Sometimes as songwriters, we get too caught up in rhymes, and we get too caught up in syllables and all of that sort of thing that we lose sight of the song. And one of the things that Hank Cochran told me that stuck with me forever, he said, whenever you write a song, he said, read it. And he said, if it sounds like you're having a conversation, then it's right. And he said, if you're talking about the sun in California, and all of a sudden you're at the bottom of the ocean he said, then you're not on topic. You have to, every line has to follow the previous line as if you were telling a story or if you were having a conversation. So anyway, just little things like that, we get caught up in trying to make songs really cool and really poetic, and sometimes it's really you just got to just tell the story, and simplicity is a good thing sometimes.
Yes, I think it's a humility thing to be able to say things in a simple way instead of trying to be artsy and make it complicated just for the sake of it. So some of the best songs are just the simplest of ideas, but they're relatable.
Absolutely true. The biggest probably the biggest hits ever recorded were just the most simple little things. If you remember Louis Satchmo, this is going way back before my time, but he had a song called "What a Wonderful World," it's just the most simple little song, and it's probably today, I would say, maybe the greatest song ever written. So I don't know. I just think there's an art to songwriting.
Yes. Yeah. When you think about the structure of a song, I know there's a lot of different ways to do it, but what is kind of the natural flow of a song structure?
Lydia, I'll tell you what, you probably know this. I have people send me poems from around the world, and I get them from everywhere, from Spain, from Australia, just everywhere. And they actually found a video that I did out there on the internet floating around, and saw where I did that on a video. And so they started sending their poems to me, and I just started trying to help these people. I think it's important for us to give back to others as songwriters. When if we've had success, we need to try to help other people. And so that's what I did with these poems. And I will work with them on structure, and a lot of times they will send. The best, easiest way for me to explain structure to someone who's just doesn't understand it or has never done it, try your best to have a rhyme scheme. In other words, if line 2 ends with the word yes, then maybe line 4 needs to end with the word bless. That's your rhyme scheme. You want to try to keep that. That's important. There are other rhyme schemes, rhyming the end of line 1 was end of line 2, and vice versa. And I don't want to get into that. It's confusing. But the best thing I can say is I teach people, when you're writing, until you get really good at it, use syllables. Use the syllables. If you have 12 syllables in your first line and 14 syllables in your second line, then make 12 syllables in your third line and 14 syllables in your fourth line.
So there's some kind of pattern that repeats.
Otherwise, trying to put a melody to that is near impossible. It is possible, you can do it, but it's just not structured properly. So I know your songs, Lydia, since you were, some of these things come natural to people. I remember when you were just a little girl, you bring your songs in here, and they were always perfectly structured. That's a gift from God. But some people have trouble with that, and my best advice is to try to keep the same amount of syllables in your lines. And if line 2 and line 4 are going to rhyme with each other, line 1 and line 3 does not have to, but they should be the same amount of syllables or close.
Then that makes it singable, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you're adding music to a poem, or you're trying to put music to lyrics that are already written, that syllable count is important because it has that pattern for singing once you add the music. So when you are starting out writing a song, do you think about, I think this is something that you taught me a long time ago, is think about the topic of the song and then make every line make sense with that title and that chorus and whatever the song is about?
Well, one of the things that I try to get into with songwriters when they're new coming up is that if they write a line, I say, okay, now make the next line just a simple extension of that line. In other words, if you wrote a line that said, there's an old song called "Today I Started Loving You Again." That's an old Merle Haggard song going way back. But that popped into my head. But if he says, "Today I started loving you again," I'm right back where I've really always been. What he did was he chose to rhyme line 1 with line 2. But when you read line 1 and line 2 is an extension of that line, he doesn't change subjects.
Right, he continues that thought.
Yes, so many times people want to change the subject, right? And the listener can't stay with that. The listener gets lost and they go, what are they talking about? So it's very important that, if you write a line, then you follow it up with a line. Then you can start to move into a different direction. But 2 lines back to back need to stick. They need them to make sense, and they need to follow each other as if you were having a conversation.
Mm-hmm. I think I've heard you say this before, that when you're storytelling, you should ask yourself questions. of who am I talking about? Who am I talking to? Will my listener understand what I mean by this, or should I say it in a different way? So are those the kind of questions that you ask when you're crafting your story?
Yes, and sometimes I think a lot of times people will get confused. They'll confuse the song. They'll start talking about you in the first person, and then they'll change from, I feel this about you to she is all, and now all of a sudden it sounds like you're talking about someone else when you're still talking about the same person. You have to be careful and not do that. You want to stay with, if you're talking about you, then it's you and your and so on, so forth. And if you start talking about you and she, then you got a third person there. It's very confusing, but it's so important.
Right. So keeping it consistent to the tense that you're in and the person, to make sure that the listener doesn't get thrown off by that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot.
How important is it to write for the listener? Because a lot of people like to write to express themselves, but I think it's important to think about who's going to be listening to this song. So at what point do you change it based on who's listening and who's going to be your audience?
Well, if you're trying to write a song and you want to write a song about that you think is going to be played on the radio or that some artist might want to record, obviously, this was one of the things that Dean Dillon taught me years ago. He said, the songs that always do the best are the boy-girl songs, the love ballads, those types of songs, or it doesn't even have to be a ballad, but whenever you're talking about how you feel about a person, and he always told me those were some of the biggest songs that he had ever had. Not in every case, but that's a good starting point. But then again, I've discovered, Lydia, through books. I've had book publishing companies call me and say, hey, we have a book that we're getting ready to release, and we'd like to have a song written that would go with that book. This is getting popular. And I had this happen with me just recently, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. A little girl, I say little, she was 23, but she had the mind of a 10-year-old. And she was brutal. She was kidnapped and brutally raped, and it was a horrible situation. And they wanted me to. She had written a book about this story, and they wanted me to write a song to go with it. And boy, I got to tell you, that was a tough thing to do. I had to interview her, and I had to find out as many details as I could. And when I wrote the song, it was as if you had read the book. Wow. And things like that are very difficult, but I find them challenging too.
Yeah, that is a challenge, to condense a story into a 3-minute song.
It's very difficult to write a book in 3 minutes, and that's exactly what songs are. And it's, if you really think about that, she wrote this book with a professional writer, and that book had 500 pages in it. And her publisher told me, he said, when I listened to that song, he said, I didn't even have to read the book. Everything was in the song.
Yeah, it's already been summarized with, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Exactly. And so, it's good. If you're going to sit down and write a song, I like to have a title. I like to sit down and have a title, and then I look at the title and I say, okay, what is this song really going to be about? And then I start putting myself into the song. If I don't do that, if I'm separate from the song, people will say to me, how can you write a song about something like that? You've never done that before. Because I've written songs about drinking, alcohol, or stuff like that. And Lydia, you know me, I've never drank in my life. But you have to put yourself, it's like being an actor, and you have to put yourself in the actor's role, and you have to write that song as if you have lived it, and you have to make the listener believe you. It's not easy, but it is possible. And I will tell you this, from my experience working with people who write poetry, I have discovered that I can teach people how to write songs properly. And they can become better songwriters. In fact, they can become really good songwriters.
Right.
Even if with not a lot of talent. Now, you have some people who just, they can't stay on topic or whatever. There's some people that you cannot help. But there are a lot of people, if they've got the least amount of talent, and I see that, I can work with them. and get places with them, you know.
Yeah, a lot of people have that natural talent, but they just don't have the direction, or like you said, don't know how to stay focused on the idea, because as creative people, we have so many ideas. We try to fit it all in one song.
Right. And it is so common whenever you're first doing it. The most common thing I see with new songwriters is they really get caught up in the rhyme. The rhyme becomes the most important thing to them, and they lose track of the story. So therefore, and they many times people feel that the rhyme has to be an exact rhyme. So if you say boy, then you better say toy, and that's not always the case. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Sometimes it's an indirect line or an internal rhyme.
That's right. And if you start boxing yourself in to say, okay, I have to have an exact rhyme, and if you start boxing yourself in to do it, you're not going to tell a very good story, because you're limited to so many words. There's only so many words that you use that are rhymes. So whenever I'm writing with people, I'll say, a lot of times they'll say, okay, the last word of the line will be ask, for example. And I'll say, you don't have to rhyme perfectly with ask. You don't have to say task, and you don't have to say, you can say last. In other words, you're putting a T at the end of that. You can say past. You can even say mask and put a K at the end of it, see? And people don't realize that you can do these things. And sometimes you can even say black or sack, anything like that. As long as it's got that that vowel in there, you know, you can do that, and it works beautiful. And I've heard it in a million hit songs like that. So that opens up doors for you.
Yeah, and sometimes it depends on the style and the genre of the song, doesn't it? Because it's how you sing it that makes it have that rhyme, even if it's not an exact rhyme.
That's exactly right. And one of the, and you know, lately, Lydia, one of the things that's really helped me so much is I've started getting into other genres. I started getting more and more away from country and getting more and more into pop. I've got, as you know, I have a little boy, 12 years old, and he sings he does duets with a little girl from Canada, and they are practically YouTube stars. They have millions and millions of fans.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and so I started writing songs for them that are pop, and it's kind of opened up a whole new avenue for me. I love it. You know, being a musician, I'm not limited on what I can do. I can, you know, so it's kind of fun getting to do different genres too. I'm really enjoying that. But you know what? The thing is that rule of songwriting applies to every genre. Unless even hip hop. If you listen to hip hop, you're going to hear those rhymes. You're going to hear the same amount of syllables in those lines, and they're going to rhyme at certain spots. It's crucial.
Right. Pattern is so important with music because it's going to make everything flow.
It's musical. Yeah, that's what makes it musical.
Well, I definitely wanted to talk to you about this new venture that you've started, writing songs with your Facebook friends and having multiple songwriters on the same song. I think that is so cool, and I've just never seen anyone do it that way. So tell me how that came together and what gave you the inspiration to start that.
Lydia, I've always, my recording studio, I don't have to tell you, you know better than anybody. It never stops. It stays busy. It runs. I work a lot, and I still enjoy it. And as long as I enjoy it, I'm going to continue to do it. But one day, I had a day where I didn't have one single thing to do. I had nothing to do. I was totally caught up. And I sat down. I thought, I'm going to get on social media. I got on Facebook, and I thought, gosh, I haven't posted anything on here forever. What do I do? You know, what am I going to say? And so I got thinking. I thought, you know what? I just posted. I'm going to write a song. Who would like to join me? And I posted that just to see if anyone would even respond. 186 people responded to that one post.
Wow.
And said, yes, how do we do this? Well, now I've already stuck my foot in my mouth, and I have to follow through. And I thought, well, doggone it, I'm going to have to make this up as I go. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to post a title. And I said, we're going to start with line 1 of the song. And I said, everybody is going to post one line. And I said, the next morning at 10 o'clock a.m., I'm going to choose the winning line. Well, everyone posted a line, and I got to looking at this thing, and I thought, wow, some of these people have talent. And some of these people don't have a clue, but some of them really do have talent. And I'm watching and I'm looking at these lines. Well, the next morning I posted the winning line. All of these people, over 100 people, come back and was congratulating the winner on what a wonderful job they did. And I saw these people are really trying to help each other. And I thought, this is extremely cool. So then I said, okay, we're going to go to line 2 now. And then I would give them I would say, okay, we need 12 syllables in this line, because line 4 is going to have to rhyme with line 2. I started teaching. And I said, so line 2 is going to have 12 syllables, and it's going to end with this word, or it has to end with a word that's easy to rhyme with, because if you throw out a word like, plaster, you're going to have a hard time rhyming with that, right?
Right. So it needs to be easy enough to follow up on.
Yeah, you have to choose the word carefully that we can rhyme. So these people started getting the hang of this. And we went through this, and it took about 3 to 4 weeks, but we had 22 songwriters on this one song. And I thought, you know what? It's a shame just to do that, and nothing happened with it. So I recorded it in my studio, and I didn't just record it myself. I mean, I brought in Nashville studio musicians on a day we had a recording session. I said, hey, I'm going to throw this song in, and I want to pay everybody a little extra, and I want you to play on this. And then we did. We put it out there, and boy, that thing people were listening to that, and all of a sudden I started getting all these emails from people going, when are we going to do this again? When are we going to do it again? And so far, I think up to date, we've written about 8 songs now.
That's amazing. All on Facebook with your Facebook friends, and a line at a time.
Yeah, and it's not, and I don't know any of these people really. I have noticed occasionally I will look them there, and I will see a name, and I'll go, wait a minute, that's a professional. I know this guy. I've written with this guy, or I know songs this guy's written. So they are on there too. It's
right.
Kind of fabulous to see this,
But it's an even playing field, because anybody that wants to pitch in and add a line can do it, even if they haven't written a song before. They're able to learn through that.
So the odds are about 1 in 200 or 300 that you're going to get chosen. If you break it down. And I have my closest friends, and some of my clients will send me private messages and go, why don't you pick my line? It's really funny. And I come back at them and I say, look, if you have the best line, I'm going to choose it. If you don't, I'm not. So one day, Lydia, I was writing the song, and I started looking at all the lines, and I don't look at the names. I try not to look at the names. I try just to look at the lines. And I saw a line, and I went, that's the line. That's the winning line. And then I turned and I looked at the name of the writer, and it was my son, Braden, my 12-year-old son. And I was like, oh, I can't choose this line. I can't choose this line because this is my son, and people will think that I'm. So I called my daughter, and I said, Julie, Braden wrote a line in the song, and it's the best line, but I can't choose it because he's my son. And she said, if it's the best line, you have to choose it. She said, you just explained this is the best line, and I chose it. She said, do not cut him out of this if he wants to participate. She made perfect sense, and I chose him, and everybody was wonderful about it. He's never won another line, but he won that one. So, yeah, anybody can win. And so there are people who have been doing this, Lydia. We've written 8 or 9 songs, and there are people who have participated in every single line and have never been chosen. And then all of a sudden, bam, they hit one, and they get chosen. And to them, it's Christmas. They just are having Christmas. And when we record the songs and put them out on YouTube, which we do, they're all on YouTube, their names are on those songs. Everybody's name that participated in writing that song's name is on there.
That's awesome. What are some of the titles of the songs that you've written together on Facebook?
Well, one is called Pretty Is As Pretty Does, which is a very cool song. It's more of the 80s hair band kind of rock type ballads. But then we have Pretty Is As Pretty Does. Another one is Someone in America Loves You. That is the first song that we wrote on Facebook. Someone in America Loves You. And then another song is I Will Always Love This Place. That's one of my favorites. It's a country ballad, Someone in America Loves You reminds me a little bit of the Rolling Stones. It's kind of like a rock type thing. So there's no, whatever genre we choose to write, we write it. We don't, it's not just, and the other thing I would like to, and there's one more title I'd like to throw out, it's just called Karaoke Night at the Blue Moon Bar and Grill. And that was a title someone threw out, and I just thought, that sounds interesting. Let's write it.
I can imagine what that song would sound like just from hearing the title.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's about a bunch of people getting up there to do karaoke, and some of them are like 90 years old up there doing Elvis, and it's hilarious. It's a great song to listen to. But yeah, it's fun, and anyone can participate. New people come on and friend me, and I friend everyone on my Facebook, and anyone who wants to participate can. Charles Stewart wrote Together Again for Buck Owens. That was one of the biggest classics in history. He participated in the last song and got a line. So it's funny. We don't have just amateurs, we have professionals out there doing it too.
Yeah, that's so neat, and it's just done in a different way. When you have over 20 writers on the same song, yep. It's so cool because you've got so many perspectives, but everyone's pitching in.
Yeah, and people say, well, how can you make money? We don't care about making money. This is a workshop. See, what I'm doing is I'm teaching these people. They will say, well, can you give us some more examples about how we should? So they're out there wanting to learn, and they find this fascinating, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And some people are starting to think, you know what, I think I'm going to become a songwriter, and they're actually thinking about changing careers over this. It's huge, but you know what, I tell them, don't quit your job, don't do that, But some of these people are very talented, and I post these things. They're all out there on YouTube. You can go out there and look at them. All you have to do is go out to my YouTube channel and type in Curt Ryle, CURTRYLE. If you type my name in on YouTube, you'll see those titles that you just wrote down.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check those out, and I'll try to link to some of those, and I'll link to your website as well. For those listening, you can connect to Curt at bigmatadorrecording.com. Or you can just search Curt Ryle on YouTube and see some of these songs that we're talking about. You can also find Curt Ryle on Facebook and find him so you can be a part of these songwriting workshops and projects that are happening right on Facebook. I think that is so neat to involve more people and to pass on these great tips of what makes an awesome song.
Lydia, I'd like to throw out one more thing at you. Do we have a few more minutes?
Yes.
I'd like to just throw out something at you here real quick, okay?
Sure.
We've decided that we're going to open a record company. I've never done this. I've got a publishing company. I've got a recording studio, but I've got artists now that I'm getting some interest from major labels on some of my artists, and I've decided that the best thing for me to do is to open a record company. I already have 4 people who have stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we're willing to put up hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this thing going. So this is something that we're going to be doing very, very soon, in the next maybe 6 months. And we're also going to be, if you have songwriters on your show and they want to pitch songs to some of our artists, we would be interested in listening to them. There's no guarantees that anything will get recorded, but you know what? It's a good start. And I also want to throw out one other thing. There's an organization called TSAI. It's Tennessee Songwriters Association. And somebody wants to call me here while I'm on the radio. So anyway, it's TSAI, Tennessee Songwriters Association. And these songwriters that are coming up on new songwriters, and they're looking for a place to have their songs pitched for them, they can go and join this organization and become a part of this, and they're actually pitching songs to artists. So, I want to give your listeners some hope in a place where they can go to get some help with their songs instead of just writing them and saying, now what do I do? You know what I mean?
Yes, that's great to have a place that you can send your songs and they can help you connect to the right artist to sing them.
Yes. So that's an option for them too. And also if they're looking for a place to demo, I don't like to do a lot of demos, but if This is an option. You can come here and demo. Sometimes you can get things done a lot cheaper than you would if you went to Nashville and did it. We use the same people. We got the same equipment, all that. So, they can contact you and you can kind of point them in the right direction.
Of course. And I totally agree. Curt is so great to work with, and just make sure that the recording is top notch and that the song is done well. And so I appreciate that about you, and that you don't rush through the process, but you want to make sure that it's right. And that's not always the case. Some people will come in and out of the studio like a whirlwind, and you're not happy with the product even though you've paid a lot of money for it. So for someone to just care enough to make sure that it's right and take the time that it needs to make the song the best it can be, I think that is worth so much. And you really do care about your songwriters and your artists.
I went through an ordeal like that similar to myself, that when I first came into town before I signed with Nautilus, where I went to record and they just rushed me through there and did my vocal and stuff was out of tune. And I was like, can I fix this? Can I, and they just wanted me in and out of there where they could just move on to the next project. And I swore if I ever got in that situation, I would never do that to people. And that's why I'm like that today. Sometimes we have to live through that experience to learn, I want people, when people come in here, I don't care how great they are or how bad they sing. When they walk out of here, it's going to be the best that it can be. And that's just the way it has to be. And thank God, occasionally I get people like you, Lydia, that just walk in here and just sing like a bird, and I just don't have to do a lot.
Well, you've taught me a lot. I've learned so much from you.
Well, I have some more work for you to do. I know we're on your show, but I got to hire you to come back in and sing some stuff for me.
That's awesome. I love it. I love the studio experience too. It's so good, and it stretches you and challenges you because you can hear every little thing once you're in the studio. But you do a great job coaching.
You do learn, and a lot of times you think, well, that sounds great in the headphones, but then you get in front of the speakers in the control room, and it's just a little different,
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your experience with us and some tips for songwriting. I think this is so great for anyone at any level, just to get connected with these resources and to think about the process of songwriting more. I think it's always so inspiring to hear from you. So thank you for being willing to pass that on to newer writers.
Thank you for doing the work you're doing, Lydia. It's very, very good work, and I really mean that. I think it's wonderful that you do these things, and I'm just hoping that somewhere down the line we can help somebody, and I think you are doing that now.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you, Lydia.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a fellow writer. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next episode.